In last week's video, I was talking about paranormal activity, and in this video, I want to tell you two personal ghost stories. But first of all, I would like to repeat some of the things I said in the last video for people who are now watching for the first time. So let's talk about what happens when we die, what I believe happens. And I gave you examples for that happening, testimonials, in the Death Series playlist, so make sure you check that out if you haven't done that yet. But I believe we do have to redefine our image of reincarnation. Creation is finished, and every possible outcome has happened. For example, you make a decision, and in timeline A you make decision A, and in timeline B you make another decision. And you only experience one of those consciously in your life. You cannot simultaneously experience getting the job and not getting the job. But your soul will experience both of these. So when we die, we go back in time, and let's say in our life we experience timeline A, then we will experience timeline B. And since we had several decisions and several splits of the universe, you could say, we go back and experience all of those. So we don't really die. Also, time is an illusion, so we cannot really die. We just experience all possibilities of the same life over and over and over again with little alterations. But of course, if there is just a tiny alteration between timeline A and B, then there is a huge alteration between A and Z, and we make all of those experiences. I don't really believe that, for example, if we died in a tragic death, that we are then stuck there and we have to haunt that place and we cannot find peace. I don't think that that is what's happening. I believe that if that kind of happens, then it doesn't happen to us, but it is a creation of another person who in their hologram are making the experience of visiting this haunted place. I have had my own ghost stories. Also, I did talk to a medium a couple of times, and I can also connect to my loved ones on the other side. So how does that happen when they're not really gone, if they're just like reborn over and over and over again? But let's say we experience them passing timeline A, okay? Then I believe that journey kind of goes on. I don't know of how much it goes on for the other person. I do believe that our higher self, that higher part of us, always is on the other side. And when we die, it is this body, not so much our consciousness, because we take the consciousness back into the other timeline. You know, when there is the split right here, then we go back here and make this experience, and we have the same consciousness. And as Neville Goddard said in one of the videos I already recorded about him experiencing someone dying, coming back, he also says we go back in time and then we are the same person, basically, maybe minor alterations. But our higher self, our higher part, always is on the other side. So I believe that when we die, we go automatically back to, I don't know where this is. This could be years back, it could be seconds back, and then experience the other thing. But our higher part always is there. When we make the experience of this person dying in timeline A, we can then connect to their higher energy, or their higher energy can come visit us. We are all, I don't want to say dead and alive simultaneously. You could put it like that, but I don't want to say dead in that case, because our higher part always has been on that other side. It doesn't just go back there once we leave this physical body. It always has been there, and we can always connect to that. And also, everyone is as pushed out, and that is for the living and for those who are no longer in our experience because they departed from our physical experience. But when we talk about hologram, so who created the visit or the meeting, I don't know how else to say it, with the deceased loved one or just any deceased person? It was us. Even if you feel like they are coming to visit, it is our own assumption. It is always our hologram. It is always us who manifest. It is always our mind, our inner world. And by mind, I don't just mean the conscious mind that is getting pushed out. So it always starts and ends with us. We manifest for ourselves, that person dying or not. Well, that is not true, because time is an illusion, creation is finished. So they always had died on a specific date in timeline A, and they always had died on a specific date that may be just shortly after that or years or decades after the time in timeline A. But that always had happened on a specific date as well. We never manifest someone passing because that always, it had been created. Before they were born, it was already said that they would die on a specific date in timeline A. But we manifest ourselves if we make the experience of timeline A or B. That is our creation, always our creation. So yeah, but let's talk about my personal ghost stories. Well, I have to say, I personally always felt spirit. I remember even since I was a little child, I could never see them. For me, it was more sensing. And I remember when I was 4 years old, I was in hospital for 3 weeks, and then like half a year later again 3 weeks, and I sensed them around me, and then I told nurses, and then they gave me medication. So you stop talking about that because nobody believes you. But I could always sense spirit. I could always sense things around me, but not seeing it. I never talked about it much because even as a child you quickly realize that people are telling you, oh, it's not real, it's not true. But when I was 17, I was living in New York. I was an exchange student, and my host family, they had some money, so they had a second house. It was right on Lake Vermont, like exactly right on the lake. It was like the garden ended and the lake began. Beautiful place. And I remember the first time I slept there, and my host mom gave me the room of my host sister because she wanted me to wake up. We got there when it was dark already. She wanted me to wake up and then in the morning have the view of the lake. But every time I walked down the hallway right where that door to that room was, I had the chills, and I always had like this uneasy feeling every time. Unfortunately, later on, I got the room exactly on the other side. You know, this is the hallway, and then there's a door to the room that has the lake view, and then the other room has, you know, the opposite view. And I had that one, but exactly on the same place in the hallway where I always got the chills. I never slept well there, I have to say, and every time I was there, just that specific spot, I had like the tingles and this uneasy feeling. And I remember one time, I don't remember what the rest was. I think they may have been in a garden, and I was sitting in the living room watching TV. May have been Beaches, I don't know. I love that movie Beaches. And I definitely remember watching that there, but I don't know if it was that specific day. But I heard the dog barking. They had a dog, a Boston Terrier, and that dog was terrified of balloons. Maybe a couple of weeks before we went there, or days, I don't remember. It was someone's birthday, and they had the room, the kitchen, full of balloons that were floating on the ceiling, and that dog was terrified and did not start barking, but you could say screaming, like extremely high pitched. And okay, we were teenagers, a little bit mean, of course. We thought that it was very funny. But anyway, I was in the living room watching TV. I think I was alone in the house. Everybody was like in the garden or wherever, and I heard that dog screaming in that exact high-pitched noise, and I thought, did someone bring a balloon? Is there a balloon up there? So I walked up the stairs, and then I saw the dog cornering exactly where I always got the chills, and he was shaking. He was leaning against the wall and just shaking and screaming, and I called to him. I said, come here, boy. He got up and he walked like 2 or 3 steps towards me. Then he started screaming again and just went back to the wall and shaking, and there was nothing there. Like, there was no balloon. There was not anything visibly there. Then I just freaked out. I rushed towards him, picked him up, and took him back down. But that stupid dog, I don't know, like half an hour later, went back up there again, and the same thing happened. That time I just rushed up, picked him up, and carried him down. So it was the same spot where I always felt this uneasy feeling. The dog was having this really visible reaction, and there was nothing visibly there that could have caused him this reaction. I was like looking, is there like a bee somewhere? Does he have pains anywhere? I mean, you know, if he would have gotten stung or something like that. Nothing. And later on, my host father told me that they did have like a housekeeper, someone to occasionally check for the house, and that person refused to go in there because he actually saw a ghost exactly where I always felt it. So that was my ghost story number 1. And this is more like last week's video where I was talking about haunted houses. So it was not a spirit that I personally knew. It was someone else. Like I never met that. spirit, but I could sense it. And then the dog basically confirmed, and then my host father also confirmed that somebody else had seen that spirit. So again, what do I think happens in that case? I don't think that there really is someone stuck there. It was my assumptions of believing that things like this are possible, because I always had, and that put me on the timeline where other people and that dog made the same experience there. So somehow that lady's energy that used to live in that house was still lingering there, because again, time is an illusion. She was there simultaneously in another timeline, in a parallel universe, but time is an illusion. So for us, for our mind, it may have been like, 50 years ago, but time is an illusion. Everything happens in the now. So she was there at the same time, and maybe there was some kind of glitch in the matrix that I picked up on it. But let's talk about the other ghost story. And that happened when I just moved in here, which was when I was 23, so I'm 41 now, 18 years ago. And when I moved in here, I had nothing. I didn't even have a bed. I had nothing. My father bought me a microwave, and I got a fridge for very cheap, and I found like this couch. Somebody was getting rid of the couch, or no, I think my cousin gave me that for free, and I could sleep on that. And you see, behind that wall there's my bedroom. I didn't have anything in there. So when I left my parents, I hardly had anything, pretty much nothing. And I don't remember if I even had that couch at that point, because in the beginning I had like something you could use for guests, like a tiny chair. It's like a mattress you could fold, and then you could sit on it like a little sofa, and very uncomfortable. And I was sleeping there where my couch is right now. And what you don't see is that right in front of me, well, there's my big dining room table. It's really big. And then I do have a balcony now that did not exist back then, but a window is right there. I was sleeping here. It was in December. And I remember that just a couple of days prior, my host mom from New York told me that her mom had passed. And I was sleeping here, and I was in deep sleep, like really, really, really deep sleep. And all of a sudden, I woke up because I felt a presence in here, and it was like standing where you can see right now where the window is. Deep sleep, and I just woke up like a shock, and it never happened to me before, but I had sleep paralysis. And that was freaking me out because I couldn't move my body, and I just felt this presence and I couldn't move at all. So my heart was beating so hard, it was like almost jumping out of my chest, beating against my ribs. That's what it felt like. And I thought, oh my God, I'm dying of a heart attack right now. I then managed to kind of like crawl in that direction, and I had a lamp there that is not the ceiling lamp, but I had like a standing lamp. I don't know how to call them in English. That it has like a switch on the cable, and unfortunately I had plugged that into one of those plugs where you have like several, you have like one plug you put into the wall, and then you have several where you can plug your stuff in, and it had like an on and off switch. So I was crawling over there and then leaned up to turn on the lamp, but unfortunately the switch was off, the electricity switch, so it wouldn't turn on. I then crawled next to the door. You can't see it right now. There is a light switch for the ceiling light. I crawled there, and just in that moment when I was reaching up to push that, I realized I was still laying on my bed. So I was so scared in that moment that I literally left my body without noticing it, and I was crawling there. Or, now that I know about timelines, maybe I was in a timeline where I was crawling there on the floor, and it felt real. I felt the floor underneath my knees and my hands. It felt absolutely real. And then I jumped back and was laying still in bed. So I don't know if I literally left my body, or if I was in a timeline where I was crawling there and then I jumped back a couple of seconds where I didn't. And then of course I was freaking out even more and my heart started beating even more. But that spirit, of course, our loved ones, they never want to scare us. So she felt, I've sensed it was her, I forgot to say that. I felt this presence that got me out of deep sleep, and I sensed it was her. But as I told you, I was never good at seeing. It was more always sensing for me. But I still felt it was her, but she then left because they don't want to scare us. If they realize that they scare us, they go, because that's not their intention. They're not there to haunt us. They're just coming to say goodbye. It really did freak me out. So why did that happen? Because in that timeline where she passed, I created her, of course, being a spirit, and then I manifested her coming to me. And again, it is always our own manifestation. It is never the other person. It is always everyone is us pushed out. No one has free will in our reality, not even if they have passed. But in that moment, I connected to that higher part of her. I don't know, honestly, again, it's speculation. I don't know if part of them makes the experience of dying, the higher part, and another part jumps to another timeline. I have no idea, because when we ask spirits about how did you die, and when you contact a medium, they can tell you, a good medium will tell you in detail, oh, I died like this and like that and like that. But I don't know if they consciously experience that, or if then that is our manifestation, our own creation, our assumptions that are then through that medium or through us channeling. That's the information we pick up. So I don't really know how that works, to be honest. I don't have all the answers. I wish I did. But I do believe about the reincarnating in another timeline, in another timeline, in another timeline. And I do believe that higher part of us who oversees everything, so of course also would oversee the experience of dying in timeline A. But at the same time, that higher part of us knows that timeline B, C, D, E, and so on exists. So I believe when we experience timeline A, that person passing, and we connect to their higher part, then they will talk to us out of the perspective of timeline A, or rather our consciousness is talking to ourselves, but out of their perspective. Because ultimately we also have to remember there's only one soul on this entire planet. There's only one soul making all of the experiences. Anyway, that was my ghost stories. If you have similar, please leave your comments below. I'm very interested in reading those. And make sure that you watch next week's video. In future videos in this death series, I want to talk more about Neville Goddard and his death, what Neville Goddard said on revising death. Maybe I will even do a revision of if someone passed. Even I still stand by, I would still not advise if you are in this lack and pain phase. I was thinking about doing a video and have to do a little research about celebrities we thought were dead but then weren't. So maybe we did cross timelines here. Maybe there is a Mandela effect. I want to talk about Frank Carter, who was close to Neville, and he was the first one to saw Neville when he passed, so we can talk more about Neville Goddard's death. And of course there will be more testimonials, stories like I already recorded of people who jumped timelines or they manifested someone who died to come back. So there will be more of that. So make sure you like, subscribe, hit the bell icon. Please watch the other videos of the death series. I see you there on personal coaching. Until then, I do wish you all the best now. Bye bye.